Welcome to Be Brilliant with Jing Lang, the podcast dedicated to those seeking to excel in every aspect of their lives. Through conversations with her guests, Jing will tease out personal stories, helpful tips, and proven strategies to help you elevate your life and reach your highest potential. Get ready to dive in and discover what it means to be truly brilliant. And now, here's your host, Jing Lang.
Lieutenant Commander Kell Bliss is an active duty officer with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Commissioned Officer Corps. She's been part of the command for 7 different research vessels across the U.S. state and territorial waters. She's currently the prospective executive officer of NOAA's newest research vessel, NOAA ship OceanoGoer. She's a competitive paddleboarder, avid hiker, and sewist in her spare time. Hi, Kelly-Ann. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great, Kell. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I know today you have a day off, so
Yes.
thank you for taking your personal time to join the podcast.
Happy to. This will be fun.
So you have the coolest job ever. Tell us what you do.
I am a NOAA Corps officer, and essentially that means I am an operational specialist. I focus on the marine side, so think of it like I drive our U.S. government research vessels. We have different parties of scientists come on board the ship, and we work with them to find out the best way to deploy their gear. We're sort of operational specialists running the ship, making sure that all the logistics and everything goes smoothly. We have stewards on board the ship, making sure everyone gets fed, get everybody there, make sure all the research, the operations are happening safely, and then get everybody home again. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And then in between sea assignments, we have land assignments. And oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes those you're embedded in some of the different science groups across all of Big NOAA, not just our little piece of it. And so you could be working with research, you could be assisting with the logistics again, sort of. That's what we tend to be pretty good at. And so we find ourselves doing all sorts of amazing things, and I've really enjoyed my time.
How long have you been doing that?
In February, it'll be 15 years, so 14 and some change at this point.
That's incredible. And tell us about the alteration between land and sea assignment. Are they the same length, or how does that work?
So usually the sea assignments are about 2 to 3 years, kind of depends. Every officer's a little bit different. There's certain stages that they want us to hit at each of those levels as we come on. You've come on first and you're a junior officer, usually in your ensign rank. And at that point, you're the newbie. You don't know anything. You're figuring it out. People are taking you under your wing, showing you how things go. You're learning how to drive the ship. You're learning how to stand safe navigational watches, learning how to get from point A to point B. You're doing rules of the road, which is like similar to how you would drive, but you've got ships out there and it's not just sort of mayhem. There are rules that guide everybody so there aren't more crashes and that sort of thing, and who has right of way and all that kind of stuff. So you're learning that. And then the next time you go out to sea after a land assignment, so 2 to 3 years on the ship, and so you need to get something called OD qualified, so Officer of the Deck, which basically means, all right, the captain of the ship or the commanding officer, we call them the CO, is comfortable with your skills to know how to handle the situation. And if I don't, I know when I'm out of my depth and I can call you for extra help. And so that's one of the things that the COs are really looking for is, does this person know when they're out of their depth and to call me for extra help? And that you don't realize it at the time until you get up higher. But like, that's the part they were looking for, that I don't know everything and I'm still willing to ask questions. And that's sort of a hard thing for people to learn sometimes.
For sure. That sounds like unknown unknowns. How would you know what you don't know something?
Exactly. And then a situation pops up and you're like, well, that's new. Okay. Yeah, a little help, please. That'd be great.
Wow. I love your energy. Would you say you're always a very optimistic person?
I mean, I'm human. I always have my downturns like anybody else, but I try to just sort of make sure that I'm always looking at things as an adventure. There's the running joke on social media and everything. There's type 2 fun, and then there's, regular fun, and type 2 fun is like, in the moment, this is terrible, and I hate this, and I'm getting soaked, and I'm cold. But then you look back and be like, wow, I did that. That's amazing. And so that is type 2 fun. And so it's one of those things like, is this just bad now, or will this be type 2 fun later, or am I learning something from this? But yeah, like I get frustrated and like just like anybody else, but it's just, can I turn that around eventually?
That's an incredible mindset. Now, as you pointed out, once you describe what type 2 fun is, I realize I do have a lot of type 2 fun, more than regular fun. Um, Kyle, you mentioned briefly that NOAA, like it's mostly scientific driven. Can you give us a one-on-one on what NOAA does?
All right, I will try to make this short because they do so much. Given that it's what month we're in October, so it's still hurricane season. You've probably heard of some of our colleagues that are flying through the hurricanes to get data so they can get better recommendations for people to go and hey, we want to evacuate this area. Hey, this is going to be a Cat 5 when it hits. So we've got people doing that stuff. We've got people looking at fisheries and are we fishing these areas out, kind of setting the cap limits to make sure that we're not overfishing things. National Marine Sanctuaries is part of NOAA, and they're sort of providing safety for special places so people can enjoy them for years to come. We've got people looking at endangered species. We've got people looking at corals and benthic research and oceanography and atmospheric climate change type stuff and marine archaeologists, tides and currents, charting to make the navigational charts for marine vessels. That's one of the reasons why NOAA falls under the Department of Commerce. And every time there is a natural disaster, we have teams of people that will actually go out and survey harbors to be like, yep, okay, there's no debris in the way, ships can come back in, commerce is good to continue, which is something I didn't realize till I got into NOAA, but is, all right, that makes sense. Okay, I can see that. So fun fact, I guess. We've got people that are doing snow survey. So they'll fly and see how deep the snowfall is, and they'll be able to predict if there'll be droughts. Like I said, oceanography, we're doing ROV work. We've got one ship that goes out and televised, you can find on their website, and watch the live dives while the scientists are narrating what you're seeing on the way, which is very entertaining, especially when they've been doing it for 6 hours and they're getting a little bit punchy and snarky. And it's great fun. They're telling you what they're seeing, but it's hilarious at that point.
It's a reality show.
Yeah, scientific reality show. I like it.
You said ROV earlier. What is that?
So ROV is a remotely operated vehicle. So think of it like a little submarine without people in it that's tethered to the ship. And so they drop it down off the ship, and then they have a person inside the big ship that dropped the little ROV off. And it takes, depending on how deep they're going, hours to get down to the bottom. And then they sort of drive it around remote controlled so they can look at cameras. They've got lights on it. They've got little arms that can reach out and grab things and take samples and that sort of thing, and some amazing stuff that they can do with them.
Wow, that sounds incredible. It just reminded me of a claw machine at the arcade when you mentioned the picking up an object.
Yes.
So Department of Commerce, not in a million years did I think NOAA will fall under that. What does the Department of Commerce do? It's not money related?
So I don't know in super detailed terms, but essentially it's anything that's helping to move business forward in the United States. So the Census Department falls under the Department of Commerce. The National Institute for Standards and Technology, or NIST, also falls under the Department of Commerce. And these are all things that, the U.S. is we need to put sort of regulations in place to make sure people aren't getting cheated, to make sure that we're moving forward. So those sorts of things.
Cool.
Shipping is happening. All the agencies are very related. Department of Commerce is very related to the Department of Transportation, touching each other on the edges. Department of Interior, doing some scientific stuff on the inland of the U.S. They're all very connected.
Okay. Thank you for the crash course on U.S. government and how they're related.
Yeah.
So I guess, Kel, right now you're waiting for the OceanoGoer to be built. Yes. So is your current portion considered a land or a sea assignment?
So right now it's considered a land assignment. When the ship is officially delivered to the U.S. government from the shipyard, it will at that point switch to a sea assignment. So this one's a little weird. We don't get new ships very often. So they're well, we want you to know the ship and like learn it. So we're going to send you down there before it's ready. So I've been walking around the ship, watching, it get constructed, seeing in all the void spaces and all of the tanks that will be closed up, seeing how they're all like touching each other and like sort of the 3D image in my brain versus just a blueprint on the table sort of thing. So later on, when we're responsible for doing all the firefighting, if there were ever to be a fire, we know what spaces are touching other things. Like, oh, that one's got flammables in it. We want to make sure we keep that bulkhead cool. Bulkhead just being the wall. I'll try not to throw in too much nautical jargon.
Not at all. I understand bulkhead really well because I just did some home renovation.
Gotcha.
Wow. Fire on the ship. Does that happen often?
Well, hopefully not, but it happens. And we need to be prepared for it. So we'll have firefighting gear. We're all trained in how to fight fires. We've got a couple of different systems. We've got regular hoses. We've got like spray heads. We've got some that go automatically if there's smoke or temperature rises indicated. So they're doing our best to keep everybody safe with as many different ways as we can.
In your nearly 15 years career, have you personally experienced a fire on the ship?
Thankfully, no.
Let's keep it that way.
There have been other ships that have had fires. Thankfully, we haven't had injuries. So we're just going to keep knocking on wood on that one, that continues. But we're training just in case it does. We can protect our best as possible.
That's amazing. Is there a typical day on the ship?
A typical day. So there are 3 meals on the ship. Not everybody is going to do all 3 meals, depending on watch schedules. I'm one of the officers, so I'm going to be on a bridge watch schedule. And so they can be a little bit varied. The ones I've been on most often are generally 4 hours on. So you're on the bridge for 4 hours straight, looking out, driving the ship, getting the navigation, talking to other people around. You might be running ops from the radio and like making sure everything's going fine from a bridge standpoint. And then once that's done, you've got 8 hours off the bridge. That doesn't necessarily mean off duty. That just means off the bridge. It can mean 8 hours off, but so that might be when you're getting your meals. That might be, I've got some paperwork, I've got emails I need to check up on. I need to, get some purchasing done for this thing I know we're going to need at the next port, setting up logistics for our next import. When the ship comes in, silly things that you wouldn't necessarily think of, but like somebody has to set up the dumpster, somebody has to make sure we've got rental cars available when we come in to go get groceries and so on and so forth. So that kind of stuff. And then you'd go back up for a second 4-hour watch. And so usually, though again, not always, usually it's one during the day and one at night. And so you're just sort of adjusting your sleep schedule around those 8-hour bits, however you can, to get as much sleep as you personally need and your other duties finished.
Wow. Do you ever get seasick?
Not often, luckily, which is probably why I've stayed in this career so long. But it has happened on occasion. There have been a few, you're just catching a lot of waves. It's been usually off the coast of California, because we've just gotten some pretty big waves, and everybody's looking a little green, even the old salty dogs that have been out there for years and years and years, and have been doing this longer than I've been alive, sort of thing.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Tell me about your experience working with scientists. Well, you are a scientist,
so
right?
I have a degree in science, and so one of the things I think NOAA Corps looks for, they don't specifically say this, but this is sort of my paraphrasing of what I'm seeing, is they want to hire NOAA Corps officers as people that can talk the science lingo. So they want people in science and, technology and mathematics and engineering and like some form of STEM. So you can at least, even if you don't fully understand what the scientists need, you get enough of it where you're like, okay, I get the gist. Logistically, here's what I'm recommending. And so essentially, you've sometimes got the scientists that are so focused on their like little piece of the research, they're not necessarily standing back to look at the big picture. And that can lead to some really entertaining situations. We had one scientist when I was a brand new baby ensign on the ship. I think it was like my second week or something. I'm like, I don't know anything yet. And so I'm up there on the bridge, and this scientist comes up, and the CEO was supposed to come up in a little while. He just wasn't time yet. It was like 10 minutes away or whatever. And so the other officer, so before you're qualified, you have another officer standing with you, had just stepped out on the bridge wing and was like kind of looking out with the binoculars. And so at that moment, I was by myself on the bridge itself. And this scientist comes up ranting and raving about how we're messing up their science and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And it took me a minute to understand what he was like so upset about. So I'm looking at the chart and I'm looking at the coordinates he's giving me and like what the issue is. I'm like, oh, I was like, okay, but maybe we can do something else. Drop a small boat in to get you to that spot or something. But the ship can't go there because there's only 2 feet of water. The ship won't float. Like, we need 15 feet. That's not going to fly. And he went, like, completely derailed him for a second. He was like, oh, yeah, maybe a small boat. And it's, like, that's an extreme example, but it sort of highlights it really well. You know,
so there was
like,
something
we're
that
the ones looking at, like, how to look at the big picture, keeping the ship safe, keeping them safe. Yeah.
So did you mention that there was something that he wanted on shallow water?
So
and he was upset. There
was a particular coordinate that he wanted the ship to go to so he could do a sample off the ship at that point. And so a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of projects come on with like a list of coordinates, and we'll just one by one go to those spots for whatever it is that they're researching. That, you know, some of them are like randomly generated. Some of them are like, we've been going to these spots for 50 years. Like, it just depends. And so this one was, I don't remember if it was randomly generated, but he was like, no, we went here last year. We have to. Oh, okay. But I was like, watch me chart this. Like, let me show you how, like, I'm not trying to screw with you or anything. Like, this is where this spot is. If you look right here, there's 2 feet of water. That's in the shallows.
Yeah.
And he's like, right. Yeah. Okay. So then we were able to have like an actual conversation about what he needed to do at that spot. And then CO came up as I was sort of finishing this, and he was just like, she's good. I like her. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh, yes.
Like, thank you. But it was, it was a little bit, I was like, oh, I'm the new kid. And I'm like telling this guy we can't do something. I felt a little bad, but I was just like, no, there's 2 feet of water. We can't go there.
You said CO. What's that?
The CO is the commanding officer.
Got it.
The second in command, I'm the executive officer. Prospective executive officer because the ship isn't finished yet, but once the ship is ready, I will be the executive officer.
Wow. And what would the CO be? Equivalent?
The CO is actually my boss. He's in the office or in the trailer at the shipyard today, and he is a captain. So he's 2 ranks ahead of me right now. He's a lovely, lovely human being. I'd never worked with him before. I mean, I knew him. We're a very small service. Yeah, he's lovely.
So you always have to support the CEO regardless which assignment you are on. Yeah. Tell us about your tips about working with different personalities.
Yeah, and I think one of the things for me is to just sort of, when they first get there, I like to step back a little bit and just sort of watch how they operate and then how best I can fit myself in. Like, if they're going to be a person that like yells a lot and they're very authoritative and they want, when you do something or when I say something, you'd say how high, sort of like, that sort of, immediate. Those are the kind of people that like, okay, I'm not going to ask questions in the moment. I'm going to go back later and say, okay, I had some questions for my own knowledge.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted to know. And oftentimes for me, that kind of thing has worked out really well. And so what I recommend for different types of leadership is just kind of step back and like observe and then figure out how to fit yourself in with their style, because you're not necessarily going to change their style at the time.
Right.
Like over time, maybe. If they see like, oh wait, I don't need to be this like crazy authoritative person, like everybody's doing pretty good. But it's just sort of like watch and see, I think is sort of the best way. I recommend that one. Do your best. Ask questions when it's appropriate. But yeah, and then just sort of be flexible. Okay, this person doesn't like to be questioned in front of people. I'm going to ask them questions later, and definitely couch it as like, oh, for my own knowledge, for to get better.
Yeah.
My current CO laughs because I'll, while we're there, there's lots of things. Neither of us have been part of like a construction of a ship before. And so I'm asking him lots of questions because he's been much more on the hydrographic side of things, which is the ships that do the mapping of the seafloor to make charts. Most of my career has been on sort of the other side of the fisheries and the oceanography and like the sort of classical science sort of things. Just very different points of how we look at things, which is great because I am learning so much and I'm really enjoying it.
That's amazing. I want to take a side tour into how we met.
Yes.
So that it's been over a year now. Time flies.
Yes.
It was a Yale leadership program, April 2023. I recall you were one of the 2 NOAA officers that was part of that program.
So I was the only officer. The other one was a civilian. What I didn't mention before is on the ships and then NOAA, like Big NOAA, all of NOAA, we have a lot of civilians. Like unlike the Navy or the Army vessels, we have a small bit of officers and then everybody else on the ship is civilian. The same thing happens in our offices and our workforces. It's like very few officers and then everybody is civilian. So the office that I was working with, the Office of Marine and Aviation Operations, which falls under NOAA. That's also the office that NOAA Corps falls under, but they're bigger than that as well. So they said, we're going to make this competitive training opportunity. So write us basically an essay that says why you want to go to this program, and we're going to pick the best 2. One will be a civilian, one will be an officer, and you guys will go to this program. And so I was like, yes, this sounds fantastic. I'm going to be an XO soon. I'm going to be in charge of people. This will be my first time being a supervisor. I need to be really good at this. All right, I'm writing my essay. So I wrote my essay. It was like 4 pages to start, and they were like, no, we want 1. So I had to revise it a whole bunch to make it, small enough, but got it there, got it turned in. Luckily enough, I got selected. So that is how I made it there.
That is amazing. And you brought so much different perspectives to the program because we had, I want to say 40 people, but you were the only officer. You're the only person who came from a military background because you came with a uniform. Was there anything specific you wanted to get out of the program?
Well, up until now, I've not been a supervisor before. And honestly, I felt really overawed going into the room. I was like, oh, these are all CEOs and like big time people. And I'm going to be like the new kid in the room. And I don't know what's going on. I've never been a supervisor before. This is all new to me. And so I was fully expecting to be like quiet in the corner and be like, okay, I'm just going to learn, like learn what I got to like see where I can fit myself in again. Sort of that same, like I want to watch and figure out. And then I was like, no, we've all got very different points of view and we've all gotten here in very different ways and different experiences. And it was just fascinating to hear how everybody else, like, okay, so that's how it would work in like that type of business. And I was like, okay, well on the ship it goes this way. And so it was just sort of like we were sharing our different perspectives and sort of, again, opening up that big picture world for, I think, all of us, which was great.
Yeah, you were fully present and you made a huge impression.
I think that goes back to the being like, I'm going to ask a lot of questions because I want to know about stuff. Like, I like to be curious. What don't I know? What can I learn from this? It's that type 2 fun thing again. All right, this is hard right now, but what am I going to take back from it later?
It will be type 1. When we're having fun already there.
Yeah, but going initially when I was nervous, I was like, okay. This is going to be type 2 fun.
Got it. That makes sense. Well, I'm so glad that I got to meet you there and we kind of continue contact after that. Well, let's talk about paddleboarding. I remember seeing a very memorable photo of you dressed up on a paddleboard. Tell us more about that.
Yes, so that photo is me in a dinosaur onesie in front of the Lincoln Memorial in DC on the Potomac River in January. I had a wetsuit under the onesie, but yeah, that was a group paddle. We were calling it the Party Animal Paddle for the New Year, just to kind of be fun, but I also paddle competitively, and so I race as often as I can. I'm doing one tomorrow that's more of a charity paddle, like group paddle, but there's a little bit of a race involved, so I'm very excited about that.
That's awesome. And I recall another photo of you in metallic outfit.
That was another paddle that was for charity. We were raising money for Mr. Trash Wheel in Baltimore Harbor. And so Mr. Trash Wheel is a really cool thing that they've done that basically it's a big paddle wheel that sort of floats around the harbor and picks up the trash, and it dumps it directly into a dumpster. So they're cleaning up the waterways with this like solar powered paddle wheel thing. And so we're raising money for that. And they actually had a band come out, stand on Mr. Paddle, or the wheel thing. And, there were kayaks and paddle boarders and, small rowboats, and there were canoers, and there were just everybody out there. It was all paddlecraft, and we were just enjoying the concert that they were putting on. And then they had little stops for us to see some of the photographic spots of Baltimore from the water versus from land. So that was kind of fun. I think the tourists on land found it as funny. I think the people on land found it just as fun. Like, what is going on? This is amazing.
I can imagine. I mean, I've seen the photo. That's amazing. And you mentioned that you are going for another charity paddleboard tomorrow. So your foot is good?
Yes. Broke my ankle back in January, and as of last week, got fully cleared from both the doctors and NOAA. So I am fully cleared, back to all the fun.
Congratulations.
Very exciting. Here's a long road to get here, but yes.
That's great. I'm
Yep.
happy to hear it.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed when we're at Yale together was your outfit. You were dressed in military outfit, but at one of the dinner events, you brought a dress that you made.
I did. So I really enjoy sewing. It's sort of a good creative outlet to take some like really amazing fabric that's just, this one's fun. The dress in question that you're talking about had like constellations all over it. They glowed in the dark, because why not? And I turned it into a cute little shirt dress. And so I love finding like interesting fabrics. I like to find things you're not going to buy in a store. Just unique. Because if you can buy it in a store, all right, everybody else is going to have that too. But if it's something you can make, nobody else, even if they're buying the same fabric, they're going to do something different with it. And so that's kind of exciting.
That's so amazing. I had another guest that was on the show last season. She also made all her clothes. What is the most challenging thing you have made?
Most challenging thing I have made is a bathing suit. I was so intimidated to start. I had it cut out for over a year and just like sitting in the corner of my house staring at me. And I was like, I'll get to you eventually. But the fact that it's super stretchy fabric and it's slippery as well, and then there's elastic involved, and I've had bad experiences with trying to get elastic into things, and I was just like convinced it was going to go badly, and so I had to really talk myself into it. But it finally came out. It was not perfect, but it was pretty darn good, and I'm quite proud of it.
That's amazing. And what's the latest project you have?
The latest project is, so for my paddleboard team, I am making us matching flamingo board shorts. Because our name is the Filthy Flamingos. And so I found a company to do custom fabric, and they put our team name on the fabric. So I'm making us matching board shorts.
Oh my God, I have to see that. Please send a photo once it's done. Oh, is it right there?
I'm working on one right here. So it's
pinned
together
God.
Right now because I'm still working on it, but that's the fabric.
Oh, that is so cute. I want one. That, hearing that you make all your clothes and my other friend that make all her clothes make me feel so lame that, everything I have is just on a store.
It's just a hobby,
I'm going to have to find ways to accessorize, maybe.
Exactly.
Just by doing something.
That's the same idea. You're just making it yours, personalizing it.
Absolutely. Well, Kell, thank you so much for being here today. This is fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing you in Hawaii, because that's when the ship is expected to go to the water, yeah?
Yes. Yep. So we'll do some testing here when she's ready, make sure everything's going smoothly, and then head off, and she'll be home ported in Honolulu, Hawaii.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Be Brilliant with Jing Lang. We hope you found valuable insights and motivation to fuel your journey. Be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And share this with 3 people in your life endeavoring to achieve personal greatness. Remember, brilliance is within you, and every step you take brings you closer to your best self. Keep striving, keep shining, and until next time, stay brilliant.